Well, last month we introduced you to a group from Wisconsin heading to Antarctica to study ice cores, but they're not the only ones heading to the ice. Karin Swanson caught up with a group with more than 50 years of history of weather research on the ice.
Antarctica is the coldest continent in the world and the world's largest sheet of ice, but it's also home to the largest desert on the planet. There are large, snow-free valleys made up of loose rock and tall mountains, with the highest peak measuring more than 16,000 feet. A group based out of the University of Wisconsin at Madison has the job of recording and studying the weather across the entire Antarctic continent, including areas of treacherous terrain. The university first began studying Antarctic meteorology in the 1960s, a project that continues now as the Automatic Weather Stations, or AWS project, with the Antarctic Meteorological Research Center.
Here we're actually looking at a mock-up of what one of our automatic weather stations in Antarctica looks like.
Matthew Lazzara, a professor at Madison College and a meteorologist with the Space Science and Engineering Center at the UW, is the principal investigator with the project.
They're placed all over the Antarctic continent. As it turns out, if you were to count up all the automatic weather stations around the Antarctic, there's probably on the order of 110, 120 automatic weather stations from every nation in the world that's participating in doing research in the Antarctic.
The station's constant observations will help scientists track the weather in hopes of gaining a better understanding of the world's climate. The AWS project runs and maintains almost 60 sites through funding by the National Science Foundation.
There's been no observations routinely made in this corner of the continent ever.
Lazzara and his team plan to install 2 new stations in West Antarctica this season. Lee Wellhouse, a meteorologist and instrument technician, will deploy to Antarctica this season for the 7th time. It's his job to assemble the automated weather stations and make sure they're functioning properly.
Usually when we get to the stations, they look something like this, actually quite similar to this, because they're slowly accumulating snow. So everything's low to the ground, and you have to add tower, you have to raise everything back up. Usually we dig them out every 3 to 5 years, sometimes more in higher accumulation zones, sometimes in areas where it's much more difficult to get to because of weather or any other issues. We've gone 7+ years without being able to visit them.
The stations are built to withstand harsh Antarctic weather conditions.
Hold on to that. That's pretty heavy, huh?
Yeah,
and check out the momentum it takes to get that going.
Right.
So one year we went back, and this is all that was left. So this was just like the one you're holding.
That was this?
Yes. The wind caught up on the underneath and started to, and you can see it's bent this.
The original weather stations collected the basics, like temperature, pressure, relative humidity, and wind.
This is homemade.
Homemade.
Home built
in
here.
Wisconsin.
Over 35 years, some of them are that old, still operating. That's how good a piece of equipment this has been.
But the older stations are becoming too expensive to service and operate. So the group is transitioning the stations to include modern technology. And as a result, more observations can be taken.
And then one of my favorite instruments is what's called an acoustic depth gauge. This sends out pulses of sound and measures how long it takes that pulse of sound to hit the ground, rebound, and come back to the speaker.
The result is a snow depth measurement.
We're sending people to do research out there and millions of dollars of equipment and airplanes and aircraft and stuff to do that work. Let's be safe about it. Let's learn about how the weather works so we have a good understanding and can make a good forecast for those folks out there. It is a really dangerous place to get caught and have something bad happen to you. We want that.
Studying Antarctic weather can also help tie the polar continent to the rest of the world.
It's a part of the Earth's climate system. You know, it's part of where the planet is losing a tremendous amount of energy out to space, and we want to be able to understand that and monitor it, watch it, understand how that's progressing through time.
The research is a team effort, a collaboration between Wisconsin and many nations.
We can't get there alone, and so one of the reasons why we love working in Antarctica is we get that opportunity to work with scientists worldwide. Put on the parka. Here you go. Great, Big Red, as they like to affectionately call it. There you go. How's that feel? You in good shape there?
Yeah. And that red jacket that Matthew referred to as Big Red, that's part of the standard issue Antarctica gear. And there's a whole slew of special layers that each of the people deploying to Antarctica wears on the ice. But
we're going to have to save that story for next time. Maybe when it finally gets cold here in Wisconsin, we'll be able to talk about that as well.
Exactly. That's really an interesting story if you pay attention to all the little details. Like they said, the equipment from 35 years ago,
Right.
they're still trying to maintain that and
it's still
transition.
working
Yeah.
so well, but yeah, they just need those extra observations, and there's so much that they can do with all of that information they're collecting.
Cool. All right, Karin, thank you for that.